Okay. So while we wait for Howard, I'm going to put my email in the chat here, so please feel free to reach out, and I'll be able to assist you with anything you need. Let's see, I'm getting a message from, okay, Howard said his machine has just crashed and he needs to restart his Teams. So yeah, please be patient with us. I'm sure Howard will be back. And yeah, I don't know if anyone has any thoughts about this topic. I know we released a post and we asked for people to keep their thoughts for this webinar. Is there anything here that people are hoping to be covered during this webinar?
So I just think it's a really interesting time that we're in, right? Takes me back to in 2007, 8, 9. Big data was quite a big thing, but the idea of how on earth do you govern it was just beyond everybody. And it was such a great opportunity when King 3 came out and created that regulatory pressure. And then, of course, we had Papaya that was coming out soon at the time, and all the rest of it really gave a lot of energy to it. But what I find is we're in the same sort of, I don't know enough about this to know if this is okay. And for me, this is my happy space, right? So I thoroughly enjoy these kind of spaces where people are really racking their brains and coming out with things that other people hadn't necessarily thought about. So I'm finding this whole topic very illuminating. We're getting so many insights from people that are doing things slightly differently just to try and make it work in their space. And I think between all of us, we're actually going to get a really good answer at the end of the day. But it's a journey, right?
Thanks, William. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I have no idea where my machine went to. It was that blue screen of death, which you really don't want to see just before the presentation. The demo gods. I've been having it too many times. Okay. So yes, our crossword puzzle that Lachlan does on a regular basis. So if you are those that doodle on the side, I know Monica and Debbie do. So if you wouldn't mind trying the puzzle and just seeing where you get, hopefully I will address some of the questions as we're going, and you can answer them as you're moving forward. All right. So yesterday, as we spoke about, we had a really nice webinar yesterday. William, you were talking about it on the European AI Act and DORA, as they refer to it. It's an interesting name. And that's a lot about, so they've got GDPR up and running. Now they're going into the AI Act with responsibility and one of those different types of issues. And very interestingly, the NDMO and SEDIA have just published the National AI Index, okay, which is quite exciting because they had the National Data Index that looks at maturity on your NDMO standards, and now they've got the National AI Index, which talks about maturity on AI initiatives within the government. So really exciting to see where they're going. I do have some slides here, but I'm not sure whether we'll get to them today. But if anyone is interested, please reach out. Okay, so Adam, last week he said, Howard, yeah, nice idea with all of these frameworks and stuff like that, but I need to make it a little bit more practical. So we were only going to get to the case studies next week, but I've decided to move them a little bit forward. And in doing that, I need to review or go over some AI literacy. So I'm hoping that I don't offend anybody in terms of we know that data literacy and that. Oh, do you think I can't read or write? Well, I must admit I've learned a lot just putting this together. So hopefully you can benefit from it as well. Now, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to teach you about AI using one of our case studies, which is insurance claim processing. Okay. Now, insurance claim processing is actually a nicely defined business process. And interestingly enough, there's lots of flows that the industry accord, that's the industry standard for insurance, has got a whole lot of messages and data exchange standards that move between the broker that sold you a insurance policy, and then when you set up a claim, for example, you've experienced a loss, then how do they send it back to the insurer? And there's all this movement of data between these different entities. Mr. Bolton, I'm sure you are pretty aware of this. I think you spent time in the insurance industry, did you not?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so if I have any questions,
Sure.
I'm going to defer to you. Is that okay?
It was a few moons ago, but yeah, I'll dig into the archives.
Okay, great. So please stop me if you want. And this is the way I'm going to start. Now, I'm going to start. People have been asking about an AI literacy program, and it's quite an interesting one because when I started, I said, well, do I go and do machine learning models or whatever it is and statistical models? And then I thought, you know what? In this insurance process, one of the first things that they talk about is something called FNOL. Paul, do you know what that is?
FNOL. My
Yeah.
word.
So that is known as the first notice of loss. Okay, so when I lose something, when something gets stolen, when I have an injury, whatever it is, I register a notice of loss with the broker according to my policy. So that's FNOL. And of course, what I'm doing in the background is I'm using lots of Copilot, ChatGPT, Claude. I'm using whichever one is required, and I'm asking questions about this business process because, to be honest, I haven't spent a lot of time there, but I've learned a lot in my journey, and hopefully I can share that with you. And what I thought was maybe it would be a good idea to start off with AI literacy with respect to Gen AI. So that's an aspect of the AI discipline. It's not all of the techniques, but it's one of the aspects. Now, think about it in this way. You have an insurance policy, you have a loss, you get onto the website, and now you have to start reporting that loss, reporting the incident. And you probably have to go to the police first and get your insurance claim, whatever it is. Now, in terms of automation, this would be really nice if we could have a chatbot or an agent that received your notice of loss and prompted you for information. Do you have this? Can I have this? What about this? Please give me that, and things like that. So we've now got this really powerful agent that can ask me and guide me in terms of doing the work that I needed to do. And one of the first things that I've heard so many people talking about is prompt engineering. And I've even heard a situation where people saying, well, they feel that prompt engineering is something of the past because now the AI models can actually guide you on that thing. And if you use ChatGPT lately, you can see the power that that's coming in. So in terms of prompt engineering, what they are saying, and this is an advanced prompt formula, and I can really attest to this formula. You break down your prompt into these areas: task, instruction, context, reason, clarification, okay, And then refinement is the ongoing conversation with the agent, with the with the model, whichever you're talking about. So the first thing you do is what you ask the AI to do, create or answer. Now, you'll see how I do that. And then the instruction, specific information to best complete the task, give it the context, what viewpoint or role we want the AI to take, reasons why, what's the reference all about, and then clarification, where you can actually ask the person for um, and you can actually ask the model to say, have I not given you all the information? Is there something that I'm missing that will help you answer my question? And this is where hallucination comes in, is the situation of it's geared to give you an answer. Now, if you haven't given it enough information, it's going to find an answer because you've excluded certain information. So you need to one of the tricks of doing this is saying, well, please tell me what I'm missing. And it will come back to you and say, what about this? Have you thought about this? Can you answer me here? What are you trying to do? And things like that. So that helps you tremendously. Okay. So sorry, I've got this mixed up, the context and the task, but the context is please assume the role of an insurance claim business professional. So you're an SME on insurance claims, a little bit like Paul. He did a whole lot of that. Now the instruction is, I, as a data governance expert, and as William was talking about, I need to evaluate an AI use case that someone has suggested, and we want to automate the insurance claim from first notice of loss to customer feedback. So you're going to go, I make the claim gets, all the documents get collected. It then goes for an assessment and an impact assessment, and then it goes to payment and refund, and then finally, once you've been refunded or you've been paid out, then it would ask you, well, how well did you experience it? So it's this process from cradle to grave, and that's what we're going to try to automate, and we're going to try to use as many API agents, models, whatever we can. We're going to go absolutely crazy to try and work out what we can automate and how we can improve this thing. Okay, so that's my instruction. I need to evaluate this. We as a business need to get this down. I saw some really interesting statistics on Accord today. I logged on there, and one organization had on average, reduced the claims to 50% in terms of the time taken. Okay. Now, when it was a low risk claim, it was straight through processing. Basically, they paid you out as you were online. All right. Now, the reasons for this and what I'm trying to understand is I need to understand the industry frameworks that I should pay attention to. We spent a whole lot of time last week talking about those frameworks to ensure that I've correctly understood the purpose of the use case. Sorry, the purpose of the use case. If you remember yesterday, those of you that were listening to Rwana, she, from a risk point of view and a governance point of view, she said, stick to your purpose, very much like GDPR. What is the purpose of what you're doing? AI is even more important. What is the purpose of you automating this process? Okay. And so what we're trying to do is develop a balance between automation efficiencies and customer value. I'm sure I'm sure many of you have this experience of talking to an AI chatbot or a chatbot or whatever it is, or an automated voice recognition system, and it's not long before you push that button saying, please, can I speak to a person? I don't know how many of you have had lots of success. So that's what we're trying to do. We want to automate as much as possible, but we do not want to put the burden back onto the customer. And I'm also very interested in where I should place human in the loop adjudication. Okay. Now, just as that we had that discussion yesterday, human in the loop means if there's a potential high risk, the higher the risk goes, we are going to get to a stage where we say, please don't do this. But then we've also got a situation where before we make the payout, and we're going to tell the person that they're not going to get paid anything, we should have a human in the loop to be able to understand why they're not going to get paid what they expected to be paid and what the policy was saying or what the deviation was. What's the problem? Is there possible fraud? So we want the human in the loop. Okay. Now, certainly for me as a governance person, everyone you talk to, it's about human in the loop. Who's going to be able to understand what happened and give that explanation back? Okay. So that's my prompt. So can you see, and the last one is, do you need any other information to give me the best result? So this is the prompt that I gave, and it was quite powerful. Any questions on the prompt formula? Can you guys see how much information and how much guidance you need to give to the agent so that they don't hallucinate? I mean, a lot of the times is if we're not giving information, they're gonna take a guess. Okay, they're gonna guess what's not there. Any comments or any questions?
Yeah, one from me on Howard. I really wish human beings would do this to each other too, right?
Yeah.
But I find it interesting because this works inside out in a way, because when you're speaking to people, you tend to try and work with the reason, the context, give them context, and then the instruction and the task.
Yeah.
But from a technology perspective, it seems that if you give them the task, then the instruction, then the context, they narrow in a reverse order to what humans do. Did I pick that up? Or am I just
you know what, you actually don't need to worry about the order. So what I do is I do it in Word. I break it up in Word and then I take it out. Of course, my very last statement is, do you need any other information? But you can, you're not going to separate the elements. You can actually just put it in one paragraph. But what I find very frustrating with the chatbots is that, you know, sometimes you want to push new line and enter, and then it submits it, and then you're halfway through it. And I like doing my preparation of my thinking in Word, and then, okay, I've got it all. Now I submit it, and it's got the context that I'm working on.
You know, it goes back to that age-old story of ready, fire, aim, right?
Yeah.
And you actually need to prepare your conversation.
You do. You do. And part of what's also interesting is you almost should have an understanding of what some of the response is going to be, so that you can validate what it's actually saying to you. Now, there's one more step, and that's the refinement. Now, what we all should be aware of is that we can go back and say, yeah, but look, you didn't put AI governance into this. Where does that fit into the picture? We've only addressed corporate data and records management. What about AI governance? So can you see here that I can constantly go back, and maybe I didn't give them enough information, and I'll keep on going. And so this refinement is a series of questions, conversation going back with a co-pilot to be able to give me all of the information. So I'm going to show you a little bit about how this goes. And here is the process. So this is what Copilot came back to me. And I thought it was pretty amazing. So you can see here's first notice of loss, and what it's saying to there is you could use a chatbot and mobile intake. So as an example, and I think we did that with insurance. When you have an accident on a motorbike or a car, you take photographs and you submit it. Okay, so there's that mobile intake, and it can work with a chatbot to actually give you, prompt you for more and more information. Veronica, I remember us having an accident on the bike, and the first thing you did was take photographs and submit it, and it started with the journey. Am I correct? I think insurance is doing that already. Okay, so that's the first notice of loss. And then we go into the claim processing, which is the triage, and a document review. Then we go into adjudication, and we start making the decision with the rules engine. And then we go into settlement and feedback, where we pay out and we ask the customer for a survey. So how well did we do? Okay, so there's the high level process. And what's interesting here is we talk about humans in the loop. So where can we put the human in? For example, a document review. So when the person submits all the document, it's actually very good for the records manager to go and look at the quality of the document and the tagging of the document. Have the documents been tagged appropriately for the risk and adjudication to take place in the claim processing? That's the records management. And then data governance would be, have we extracted the appropriate data from the FNOL to be able to drive this decision making? So there's lots of data that they need to collect here. Who remembers master data training? William, I know you did it this week and Paul did it as well. There's something called entity resolution. So if I'm logging onto this chatbot, it needs to do quite a bit of entity resolution. Okay. Any guesses as to the type of entities that it needs to resolve?
Are you asking us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, well, you probably got to check what clients you might have, depending on where they are and which systems they might be across.
Okay.
They may have multiple products and policies.
Okay.
They may have, depending on the level of where you're going to, they might even have sub-clauses and conditions.
Right.
That could be conflicting, etc.
So you've actually got three domains there. You've got the customer domain, you've got the contract or policy domain, and then you've got some of the legal terminology that you've got sitting in there. So as it's going through this, it's trying to resolve some of those areas, those entities. And let's say, as an example, if we had eyewitnesses that saw the accident or whatever it was, then they'd need to resolve that as well. So this is what this chatbot and agent's doing in the background. Is trying to collect data for us so that the claim processing is so much better. Mr. Bolton, does that make sense to you as well?
That is a fantastic use case for my next training.
Excellent.
No, really, it's fascinating. It just shows, I was just smiling in the background saying, please don't tell Melinda I'm learning this stuff, because my lack of explanations are. So
it needs to be in the pack.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Anybody else? So, I mean, I'm sure, just this is what Copilot came back to me with in terms of that thing. Okay, so it's talking about transparency, fairness, monitoring, regulatory, humans in the loop, on the document review, in the decision making, and the customer survey. So as an example, if the customer comes back and they really cross, we need a human there to evaluate why the customer's cross. You would do that with sentiment analysis. You would review the survey, and if the customer's really hacked off, then you'd need a human to come and look at it. If the decision is not good, or if there's a request of fraud, the suggestion that there's fraud, you're going to have a human in the loop. So a really amazing set of examples that one can use in this scenario. All right, so let's have a look at this.
So Howard.
Yes.
One of the things that the UK is very big on is that first notice of loss, having a human do that, mainly because of the emotional intelligence required and the state of the person, and are they slightly mentally, what's his name? Right. And the way they tend to do that is that they will allow you to go through the bot, but they offer you the option to say, would you like to speak to a human?
Right. Agreed. So yeah, it is very important, and lots of us get frustrated. But I do remember, and the reason I asked Veronica in terms of that thing, we had that accident on the motorbike, And it didn't take long for Veronica to start taking the photographs, sending all the information. And you're right, maybe the first couple of times this may be a bit frustrating, but once once it happens a few times, then you get pretty used to handling that scenario. Veronica, am I correct in that?
Yes, you are.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. All right, so one of the questions so this is the refinement loop. So I actually asked the ChatGPT saying, please describe the AI techniques, models, and algorithms that should be applied at the different stages of the process. Okay, so remember, I've just come from this scenario. These are the different stages. And now I'm asking, well, what should we do? Okay, now it's come back to me. I haven't given you all the answers. I'm going to give you the whole answer a little bit later on, but it's basically coming back saying stage first notice of loss. That's natural language processing. I can go from speech to text and I can use a chatbot. Okay, now the purpose is to extract structured data from the customer input, voice calls, or chatbot interactions. Now, I don't know about you, but I've certainly seen so many people changing their WhatsApp behavior from typing to talking. Okay, now this is what part of this is doing is almost allowing you to talk, and then it converts and extracts the information whilst you're doing it. Okay, so that's what it came up with. And then I said, okay, create a matrix linking AI techniques to governance. So there's NLP and chatbots. This is the corporate governance. This is the data governance, the records management, and the AI governance, speech to text. Okay, corporate governance, data governance, records management, and AI governance. So you can see here, corporate governance will ensure ethical customer interaction and escalation protocols. Okay, so if the person quickly gets frustrated or is emotionally attached, then they would escalate and you'd need to get a human in the loop. Okay. Data governance, validated the input data and apply metadata to the information that's been submitted, the photographs, the policies, whatever you've asked and been submitted by the person recording, you would have to apply the metadata. Records management would be a log of all the conversations classified as records. Okay, so we always talk about the difference between a document and a record. In this situation, that person talking to the agent, that is a record. As that person is talking, we have a record. And then we need to monitor for bias, ensuring transparency in the responses. Okay, so do we have any negative response to the person we're talking to? Speech to text, enable auditability of verbal first notice of loss, ensure the transcription accuracy. So we would have to put checks in place that we could see the transcription of the actual recording with the agent and make sure that it's accurate. Store the voice logs securely, make sure they have the appropriate privacy and protection, and validate model accuracy and fairness. I'm sure lots of you are aware of nowadays when you take a video recording, there can be lots of privacy data that's put into those videos. Okay, and I even remember when you fly on the airplane, they say, please don't take a video of the people in the airplane due to the sensitive nature. So the videos are dangerous. If you get videos coming in, you can be exposed pretty quickly. Yes, William.
So one of the things that has to take place right up front with that first notice of loss is please note that everything you provide will be used. Because otherwise what happens is people provide this information and they're in duress or whatever the case is, and then they turn around later and say, no, that's not true. And then the insurance says, well, I'm not paying you because I've got this evidence that was the call. And the only fallback is, well, you did not tell me that this was part of that. What's his name?
Yes, so there's certainly, and we'll get to that a little bit later, William, there's certainly a situation of notifying the person that they are dealing with an agent, a Gen AI agent, you need to notify them and make them aware of what the context is that you're dealing with. 100%.
But Howard, even if it's not a Gen AI agent, everything they say needs to be part of a record. They need to know.
I agree. I agree. And that's so you need to. I mean, you are saying this is a record, but what I'm liking about, and I'm hoping you guys can see here, is that for every technique and every stage, you need to pay attention to what's the corporate governance, what's the data, what's the records management, what's the AI governance. On all of these things, you need to be connecting that technique to wherever it's at. That is very important. Okay. And then what I asked is, please provide a set of structured data for the FNOL stage. One must extract from customer input, voice calls, and chatbot. And it created a data dictionary for me for the FNOL engagement. Okay, so this is what it's trying to populate. This is the purpose. Customer identity, policy, incident, the claim type, the evidence, consent. There we go, consent and legal. William, that's to your point. And then channel metadata. Okay, so you needing to, when the person's engaging, you get them to consent for the usage and agree to the terms required for legal and records compliance, the records management. Okay, so all of these things are being collected as you're going along, and it's needing to translate from you talking to it into structured data for the claim processing to happen. Okay, so that was quite exciting that you could get it to create a data dictionary, and it was pretty impressive in terms of what the information that it was collecting. Okay. All right, so we go to the data dictionary. Now, here are some other techniques. So first notice of loss we've spoken about. Claim triage. I will use a classification model, an anomaly detection, and a risk scoring algorithm. Okay, now what is the purpose of this? We're trying to assess the severity, detect fraud, and prioritize the claims. And the higher the severity, you are going to increase the amount of human in the loop. Okay. If you do detect fraud, you're going to do that as well, and prioritization in terms of the individual as well, in terms of the customer. So what is the extent of the damage, and what are you facing, and that will prioritize it. So there's comments over here: claim category, estimation, estimated loss, urgency level, initial severity assessment based on sentiment. Okay, so it's giving us these scores as it's moving along. So this is what the claim triage does. Then it ingests the evidence, OCR, computer vision, document AI. So it can extract and interpret the data from the scanned documents, photos, and videos, adjudicate it, rules-based engine, decision trees, explainable AI. So giving the ability to explain what the decision was based on the evidence. Payment processing, RPA, smart contracts, and then customer feedback, sentiment analysis. So here are the set of techniques that it's recommended. Now, just from a literacy point of view, let me try to explain a classification model. Okay, so we're trying to automatically assign claims to predefined categories based on historical patterns: high risk, low risk, fraud suspected. So what are we doing? It's based on supervised learning models like logistic regression, random forest, gradient boosting. And input features, this is your structured data: the claim amount, the incident type, the location, the policy, the history, the customer profile. And we're trying to get the output that it must do is a risk category, risk classification. And we can train on labeled historical data, and we can use to route the claim to the appropriate processing path or human in the loop. Now, this is labeled historical claims data. So what this is doing is it's taking all the data with respect to the claims and just bringing the features, the critical data elements to a claim assessment: incident type, claim amount, customer tenure, location, and outcome label. So that's the goal. It's trying to classify, and it's using this data to classify Gauteng, Cape Town, and Durban. Okay, the model learns from these examples to predict the risk categories of new incoming claims based on similar features. So here they're talking about lots and lots of data. And that was a very interesting comment by Rwana yesterday to say, interesting, GDPR says minimize the data and AI is saying maximize the data. So there's some tensions over there. So everyone understand what a classification model is? Is that a simplistic enough explanation? I'm trying to categorize it. I can use these models and I need to give it the appropriate critical data elements. I'm looking for the output and I need to train it, and so that I can use it to route the data. There's my training model. Any questions on that?
No, Howard, but I would say that these insurance companies more and more are using big data streaming of if a person starts to say that they've got a first notice of loss, they start to stream in any of their public data.
Yeah.
So if they're having Facebook chats, conversations, photos of their car, all sorts of things like that are coming in, and obviously it's to see if they don't have to pay as much, right?
And it's look, I mean, we don't always understand the purpose, and yes, we think that it's that they don't have to pay as much, but they're trying to get an understanding. Now the other thing that I learned is that they're also looking for bystanders and witnesses. So people are recording this stuff, and now they're getting external evidence, which is pretty amazing in terms of being able to say, it happened at this point in time. These are some of the people that took the photograph, and they can then corroborate your evidence that you've submitted. So
which is interesting because that's personally identifiable information, right?
Yeah.
Those people in
well, if they're taking the photograph and publishing it, then
makes you wonder where the gray areas are.
Well, if they put it on Instagram or things like that, but anyway, So just backing up there, but can people understand what this classification is doing, and can you see the value of classifying the information that you've collected? You're getting to that category very quickly. Now this is, in a way, it's really just the engagement time period that you're taking, and the classifications happened very shortly after that, or after you've done that report.
It's great for also, I mean, it's maybe an obvious one, but it's helping direct the flow of traffic in the organization. So like
yes.
if something is high risk, then it goes to has got a workflow, let's say. And it starts to direct those workflows efficiently. And you can start to manage that nicely.
Because, 100. I mean, it's amazing, Paul. And what's also happening here, and what I'm not showing you, but I will show you later on, is that this can be happening between the claimant, the broker, and the insurer. So there are multiple parties, and a lot of the data exchange, and that's what Accord is trying to say, is we take care of all of this data exchange. So we've got standards for you to transmit the data between that mobile app and the broker and the insurer. We can handle a lot of that communication.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I mean, I know one of the issues locally is like car theft, how fast that car is moved out of the country even. And this kind of thing can speed up reaction time to help, potentially. Yeah.
Okay. Brilliant. And then there's something called anomaly detection, and this is quite interesting. Okay, so why are we doing it? To identify claims that deviate significantly from normal patterns, potentially indicating fraud, errors, or unusual circumstances. So once again, we can trigger a manual review or escalate to special investigation. Okay, now these are the different types of models. Notice this is unsupervised. This is unsupervised learning. Okay. Whereas the previous one was supervised learning, and we can train, these ones are unsupervised learning. Okay. So anyone like to guess what isolation forest does? That's a model. Okay, now what isolation forest does, which is quite interesting, is that it isolates anomalies. Okay, instead of profiling normal data. So what it does do, it looks at the data and splits data into points, and the anomalies have fewer splits to isolate. So they have detected the fact that your normal data sits at this pattern, and when you isolate that data, you can understand that a fraud will not be fitting into those different patterns, the normal patterns. Okay, so that's quite interesting. So you can and the idea there is to imagine finding a rare tree in a forest. It stands out and it's easier to isolate than common ones. Okay, so that's what we mean by an isolation forest. Okay, that's where it got its name from, is this rare tree in a forest, and you can quickly spot it. So similarly with a deviation or a deviance, a statistical deviation, you can pick it up in the same way. And then we've got this autoencoder, which is also quite exciting. Is what it does, it actually compresses and then tries to reconstruct the data. So it's compressing it into a certain format. It tries to standardize the format, and when it brings it back out again, it can't be reconstructed. So anomalies, like we have outliers, they can't reconstruct the outliers as quickly. So it's interesting the way we detect outliers using the box plots and stuff like that. What it tries to do is it tries to get these deviations, in the box and whisker plot. Now we're saying that these people are way off the normal, and we can pick it up very quickly. Okay. And then there's one class SVM, which is a support vector, and it actually looks at the boundary of normal data, and it flags anything outside of that. Okay, so these are vectors that it's using, very similar to what GenAI is using. All right, so this is what we're trying to do. We're looking at the normal distribution of claims, or the features. Remember those features that we collected? What's the normal distribution? We can flag the outliers based on statistical deviation, useful for detecting new patterns or rare events, and then we trigger a manual review, human in the loop, and we start understanding what's happening in that situation. And then we go to a risk scoring algorithm, which is we assign a numerical score representing the likelihood of a claim being complex, fraudulent, or high cost. Okay, so it actually has to come up with those three calculations in each of those areas. Now, there's actually a set of Excel spreadsheets that we use for each one of these areas, and it does the scoring for each stage, and it gives us this type of information so we can have a dashboard per stage. So, Monica, you can think about that in terms of our administration process. And then we start seeing the pattern of those conversions. And then we can start to say, well, what's the risk of this training engagement that we need to postpone? Okay. So we create these customer scoring models with weighted features. We can visualize them in dashboards for triage teams, some people to go and actually have a look at it between these different areas. And then it's that dynamic prioritization. Okay. So those are the three algorithms that can be used in what they call claim triage, and we can assess what's happening in that area. Okay, and then just in terms of risk and biases and ethics. So I actually asked once again, I asked GenAI to provide a bias risk-based template to say what type of biases could we have in this data that we're training, so they can have a data bias, an algorithmic bias, opaque decision making, over automation, loss of empathy. Okay, so if we're trying to force people down a path of completing that first notice of loss, we will have a bad engagement. The people feel like they're just being pushed from one step to another, and they're not really having chance to express the challenges that they're facing. Privacy violations, feedback loops. So when the customer gives us feedback, how are we reviewing that? And then sentiment misinterpretation. So we can misread emotional tone or cultural context. So we miss the appropriate escalations and false positives, and combining sentiment with human review. So fantastic, the models can do the sentiment review, but how do we validate that we're getting the right score? Okay, so we need people to look at that. So this is what it's done. It then tells us which data governance should be looking at it. Should this be data governance? Should ensure that we have no data biases. Historical claims data, unrepresented for certain groups, so certain features, Durban, Cape Town, whatever it is. And then that could have unfair claim denial or delay. So it goes into human in the loop, and we've got delay. So the mitigation is use diverse training data across all of those critical data elements. Okay, so the nice thing about that is if we have a reference data or the set of values in our value domain, we can ensure that we have the appropriate distribution of historical data on that reference data. Okay. And you can see here all sorts of different things. Corporate governance, that's bad decision making. It leads to customer distrust and regulatory risk. Corporate governance for sentiment misinterpretation. So that was quite interesting in terms of being able to look at the biases that I, as the governance area, should be focusing on. And here's some examples of what we refer to as harm assessments. So this is a harm document, and it's a pity that Mario is not here. I'm not sure if he is, but this is something that I got from Predago, and they've got these evaluations that any AI system must complete. So you can see here, risk of injury, physical, emotional, denial of consequential services, opportunity, economic, dignity, liberty, privacy, environmental manipulation, and social determination. And here we can see just as a privacy loss. So when I'm collecting this data, has it led to any interference with the private life of the individual, revealing information a person has not chosen to share? Okay, how could this technology use information to infer portions of the private life? So, William, that was a little bit what you were talking about there, is in now that we're getting all of these different people contributing data, what have we exposed, or what information have we inferred that affects their private life?
Yeah, I mean, a really good example that you highlighted earlier is if I take a photo of my car and I've got 5 other people in the car, they haven't given me permission to actually, include them. So they can't really be approached,
Yeah, you're right. And I was talking to, I'm sure some of you know, shucks, I've forgotten his name. Mark Nolte would know. In Ireland, he does a lot of the ethics. Chuck. Veronica, do you remember Dara O'Brien? Dara O'Brien. William, and what Dara O'Brien has done is he's developed an AI model that when you take these photographs or videos, it blurs the faces. Okay, so it automatically creates that if we don't have consent for that person, the face gets blurred.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So it's amazing what they've done there as well. But so this harm assessment is something that we need to be doing from a data governance or from a governance point of view. I no longer want to call it data governance because it's AI and corporate and records. So all of them come into play. And then this is a suggestion on the different places for human in the loop. So here we have 8 human in the loop for complex or emotional cases. William, exactly what you were saying. If a person's very emotional, hand that over to a human. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then claim triage. Okay, the AI-based severity scoring. So if we have ambiguous or high-risk claims, human in the loop. Documentation, unclear or conflicting evidence, claim adjudication. We could have humans in the loop for exceptions and policy interpretation on those legal terms. Payment processing, large payouts or disputes, where someone says, no, you haven't given me the right information. And then we have customer feedback. So if we have negative feedback or escalations where they say, I want to speak to a manager, we need to get a human in the loop. We actually need to get a manager involved and help them resolve the problem. So, okay, so these are some really nice automation features, but we need to be able to understand when do we bring the human in? And it's not just at the end, it's not just at the decision making. There's a whole lot of different times that it's appropriate to bring that person in or a human in. Okay. So here's the AI Act that we picked up yesterday. So if we have minimal risk, there are no obligations. So the majority of AI systems currently used, such as video games and spam filters, there's no problem there. When we go a level higher, transparency, the AI systems with a risk of manipulation or deceit, where humans should be informed that they are interacting with AI, such as a chatbot and emotion recognition. So this may be the case where the people are interacting with an agent to get the claims data, and there may be some emotional in there. So that would be transparency that we need, and then regulation could cause harm if faulty or misused, such as employment, law enforcement, police. We spoke about that yesterday with the police videos, immigration, product safety, and critical infrastructure. And then there's this ban here of subliminal manipulation or social scoring. So just not allowed to go into this area over here. So we need to identify where that risk is and then apply the appropriate checklist. So here's an example of the checklist that we need to do. Corporate data records management. Okay, so have all the AI generated decisions been logged and retained? So have we got a log of every single one of them? Are the training data sets versioned? Retention schedules applied to voice, AI governance, model tested for bias, fairness, and explainability. Okay. Now, I found this very interesting in terms of for every single AI technique, there's a series of governance checks that we should be putting in place, and it depends on the risk. Okay, so depending on the risk, we'd have to define how much of these we need to do. So everything from computer vision, support visual evidence adjudication, linking image metadata to claims, retain image analysis outputs. So what did we derive from that? And then ensure fairness in damage assessment models. Okay. All right. So the other thing that we need to be doing is with these AI models, those classification models, we need to be looking at drift. And I just wanted to share with you the type of drift, model drift dashboards that we're monitoring. Okay. So there's model performance, the accuracy or the error rate, the precision, the recall. And then look at this. This is the data distribution. So this is where we have data drift. Can you see the data drift? These are our our histograms. And so on the training data, our features have this histogram, this distribution, and on our live data, we have this histogram. So can you see that there's a mismatch between the training data and the live data? So we've got this shift that's happened, and we need to pay attention to it. Okay. And then we've got bias and fairness monitoring, demographic or equal opportunity, bias alerts that we can pick up from. We can have things of explainability and how many times did we have human in the loop overrides? So what does the override log look like? And then these are explainability areas, and of course some compliance metrics from a governance point of view. Okay, so yeah, there was a lot there. I'm hoping you're feeling more literate at this point in time. Any questions, comments?
I'm feeling a lot more comfortable.
Nice. And what's the main reason behind that?
We judging these bots harsher than we would judge any human,
Right.
and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
The question is, where does the legislation fall on these things? And it'll be the same thing as the previous governance with big data. It's going to evolve, right?
Well, no. It's interesting there. You remember I brought in that AI governance, the corporate governance.
Yes.
So that corporate governance is the one that's really bringing in the law, the corporate law for the industry. That's the corporate governance.
All right. Okay.
There's transparency in terms of how it's done. Is there board level oversight of the use of AI in claims processing? So corporate governance is addressing the corporate risk and what's been defined as acceptable within the industry, health, insurance, finance, whatever it is. Corporate governance needs to pay attention to that. So we all have to play a role in whenever we got these use cases, everybody needs to get involved in understanding what's going on.
Yeah, you're right. Did you pull that from King 3, King 5?
I actually did. It actually asked me for can we do a King 4? It doesn't know about King 5 at this point in time. I asked it
Okay.
about King 5 and it said, no, it can tell me about King 4, but King 5, King 4 it was able to do. So I asked it to apply it to local conditions and it came up with some of these questions.
Yeah, because King 5 is still a discussion document, but I found interesting the way King 5 is addressing thought leading and the future picture, but obviously not approved as yet. But
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Paul, I'm sure this helped you in some of the things that we need to do, and I'm hoping also that we still see the role of data management, data governance, records
100%.
management.
I think that's what stood out for me actually I mean, the AI and the automation of processes in these is very exciting. But it's a great, I think the webinar is great because even last week on training, tangling with some people on the training where, no, but we're going AI and all this, what do we need all this for? And just those use cases around what is the master data. If you can get you can have the whole AI workflow working perfectly in a sense, meaning it's all set up. But if that master data record is a mess, well then what's the effectiveness of it in that? So it's just underpinning or redefining the message that yes, those are solutions, but under the hood, you need to still apply all your principles and your foundational stuff, which is, and Howard didn't enjoy what I was saying, so he left. Or is that just me?
I don't know what you said, but did you say it earlier? I'm just looking for correlation about when you speak and when his laptop dies.
I must have irritated him now. He's gone.
Not sure what's happening to his laptop. It's this nice new one that does the AI on his face.
Well, I hope he brings both with him when he comes up here tomorrow.
Yeah. Sorry, Paul. I got dumped.
No, it's fine. I don't know where you left off, but it was just it's an excellent webinar, especially for, if I can say, us trainers that are entrenched in the data management training, and that we often get challenged by, is that knowledge, that data management side still relevant with AI, of course, because it's the silver bullet, and as I mentioned, very exciting, all the opportunities that you can use it for and all that, but if you, exactly what you said just now, if you don't have the governance in place, the procedures in place, the data management activities, well then this thing's going to run on what? It's just going to spit out like your example of the master data management side of it.
Yes.
You know, things like that. So that's critical to this being successful.
and also this appropriate feature. So I mean, I've known that for some time in terms of what are the features that any model is going to work with.
Yeah.
And you know, when we spoke about those features, it's very much like a goal-seeking thing, okay, where we try to say, well, we want to classify that risk, okay, so which features will help us get the risk. And so if we don't understand the critical data elements, we can have everything in, and we just don't have the reliability of the model. Okay,
100%.
so it's such an important thing to understand what data do we need to extract, what data do we need to use as that risk assessment, and then what's our critical data element to be used in these different areas, and then measuring the ongoing quality and drift of data. I think we just, as data management people, we need to learn the terminology so we can show the people how it works, what role and what support we are offering.
No, 100%. I mean, I'd venture to say without a strong data management practice, you're going to get those statistics that you showed last week, that 45% successes of pilots and things like that. I mean, that was quite shocking for me, that the low success rates. But like this classification, I mean, you can argue till you're blue in the face. If you don't get that right, well, you're just going to have workflows flowing everywhere. And what have you achieved in your big sell was AI is going to smooth out processes and be more efficient and all this, right?
Correct.
And if you've messed that classification up, well, you're just going to have a spaghetti workflow anyway. So
yeah, and look how important it is in terms of applying your fit for purpose, right? So, you know, how many people play around with that fit for purpose and then make sure that the historical claim data is giving us the information we need, and it's not creating biases. So we've got the data bias, we've got the algorithm bias. So all those things we are having to assess.
It's brilliant, sure.
You
but
know,
good ammo for me when I'm training again.
Cool.
Just an interesting observation. When we say human in the loop, what we're really saying is that actually AI is really good at process, really good at a lot of other things.
Yeah.
But the human is there to apply emotional intelligence, intuition,
right,
various things like that AI doesn't have. And it's just an observation that actually, you know what, people have got a new role in this process.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like work has now been taken away. It's just actually there's now, I mean, in the Industrial Revolution, manual work was taken away, but clerical work was now available because you had to have that as a control. Now we've got a similar thing whereby normal process work seems to be disappearing, but you've got this emotional and intuitional, etc., new kind of world that's actually stepping in that people need to step into. It's just an interesting angle.
William, it's something that there's another thing in data quality, we have that reasonableness dimension. Who remembers reasonableness, right? And what reasonable is saying is that I have reasonable boundaries, I have reasonable normal patterns. And if something's outside of that pattern, then it's an outlier. Now, unfortunately, because the machine has been taught normal patterns, when it finds, I mean, it's done a great job in identifying an abnormal or an outlier, but then the human needs to step in and then assess what's happened and why is it normal, and that's sort of what we're doing in the reasonableness check, right? That's all we're doing in that situation.
Well, it's really good to know that AI doesn't have that capability. We still got a job, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, that to me is great, that all of these anomaly detections, I mean, it's really good at picking up the anomaly in being able to isolate the single tree in the forest, and then say, okay, here's the single tree. Tell me about it, because you know, it's out of that scenario.
Yeah. So that's why I'm encouraged, Howard.
Fantastic, excellent. Any other comments? No, I've heard a lot from Paul and William. Adam, anything from your side?
Just to say, it's really interesting, and it's really nice breaking it down and seeing all the different breakdowns with the data and the different types of governance, and just how it is all interleaved or interweaved, and how important all the different elements are and how connected they are. Yeah, it's really interesting. And like you said, William, about the importance of being human and that kind of criticality or critical thinking, how important that is, and how the role of the human has changed, like you said, Howard, in their different ages and as data develops. So yeah, I think it's positive and hopeful.
Great.
Going forward.
But you know what, Adam? You've actually just said the words that sparked the thought. The new